Kip, what's up, man? It's good to see you. I think it's been, 2 or 3 weeks since we did one of these actually together?
Yeah. It's been 3 because I went solo. You went solo twice.
And I just got to say my numbers are better than yours. Just throwing that out there. I'm not going to confirm that or show you any graphs or charts to back any of that up, but just know I'm telling you the truth.
I would assume that we're doing it together again for a reason. So I'm just going to leave it there.
Fair. Good point. I guess if mine were better, I wouldn't have invited you back.
Yeah. I'll be like, that's weird. He's ghosting me. He just stopped replying to my text messages.
It's definitely, I do that solo show on Friday, which is fine. I don't mind that. I've never been at a loss for words, but it's definitely different doing the Ask Me Anything running solo. It's better with another person to bounce ideas and thoughts.
For sure.
Maybe sometimes we I don't think we ever conflict, but I think we come from it at a different angle, and that's really valuable. Not only for me, but I think for the guys that are listening too.
Well, and what I appreciate is you always answer them. So I get this, like I get to sound smart, just riding on your coattails going, oh yeah, and I would add this, meaning, but with like reality, I would have never came up with the first response anyway. So
you would have. I listened to the one you ran solo and some of the others, and you do a great job, man. You do a great job.
I appreciate it, but still, I mean, it is easier to hear someone else respond to a question than add to it. I mean, that's just reality.
For sure. I think about that even when I have guests on. I don't over prepare to have guests on. I read their book if they have a book. We just had Matthew McConaughey. I just recorded a podcast with him.
That's awesome.
I didn't do any. Oh, it was amazing. It was amazing. And I even told him, I said, look, man, I was really skeptical about your book and even doing this podcast. It was incredible, but I try not to over prepare for those things. I read his book. I listened to his book, which was better, I think, than even reading it because he narrated it himself and did a phenomenal job on that. But yeah, I don't want to over prepare for these things. I just want to be really curious and interested and not be over prepared and overly scripted for these things. Totally. So, I mean, there's value in a lot of different ways, but on the same note of podcasting, I mentioned to you, or at least you saw, because we haven't talked for a while, that Brecken and I, my oldest son and I, are starting our own his own podcast. I'm going to co-host with him initially just to get his feet under him a little bit. But we're really excited. We just secured the domain name. Cool. He paid about 100 times more than what I paid for my domain name when I started. And when I say he paid for it.
Because it was taken, or because he didn't know where to buy it?
No, it was taken. It was taken, but somebody had scooped up the domain name and wanted to sell it. But it's a great domain name. It's called Man in the Making, and perfect.
That's awesome.
Perfect. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's the first time I've said what it is. So the whole concept behind the podcast is that him and I are going to be having conversations about drugs and alcohol and pornography and the birds and the bees and growing and getting stronger, and every conversation that a father would have with his son. Yeah. So that men who have boys roughly in that age category, in that age group, might have a little bit of fodder to have those own conversations with their sons. And then once he gets his feet under him, we've got an incredible network of men, guys like Jocko and Steve Ranella and Anthony Frisilla. So eventually what I'd like to do is move into a place where he's going to be interviewing these guys by himself for 20 to 25 minutes and asking them from a perspective of what, as a young man, should I be learning as I transition into manhood and go out on my own. So it's going to be rad. I'm really excited.
So the audience, the primary audience being really his audience.
No, not necessarily.
Group, like younger boys.
That'll be a big part of it. I see it being 50-50 because what I'm seeing is, as my boy, he's 13 now, he gets older. I'm not as cool, and I'm not up as high on the food chain maybe as I once was in his eyes, right? Because he's trying to get independence and he gets a little mouthy at times because
he just gets to know you.
That too. I wasn't going to say that. So thanks for bringing that up. He realizes what I'm really about. I can't fool him anymore into thinking I'm better than I really am.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think when you have boys that start to get to that age, it gets to the point where maybe dad's words don't carry as much weight as they once did. And it's more about, hey, what do my buddies think? Or what do these guys that I really idolize or respect think? And if we can create an outlet where young men don't have to listen completely to their fathers or completely to me, and they don't resonate with me, and instead listen to one of their peers, my son, I feel like it might give them a new perspective that they wouldn't maybe listen to as much as if it came directly from their father. So there's two audiences. So it's his age group. He's 13. So I see it really appealing to somebody, a boy between the ages of 8 to maybe 15, 16, somewhere in there. And then the other audience is guys who already tune into the Order Man podcast, but they have sons, whether it's I'm becoming a first-time father, or my son is leaving the nest, or he's 13 and I need to figure out how
preparing to have a young man. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think there's really two demographics that will hit, and we'll see how it goes. But regardless of what happens, and I have very high expectations for what we're going to be able to put together, it's going to be a great opportunity because at worst, we're documenting our conversations. So if I'm ever gone, like Brecken will always have the opportunity to look at our conversations, hear our conversations. They'll all be recorded for time and eternity.
Yeah. I like it.
Yeah, man.
I like it.
So
that's cool.
What's going on?
He's killing it, man.
He's
doing so good,
to say the least. So good. It's unbelievable. Yeah. He's been doing some strength training and he's packing on the muscle, and it's pretty crazy. I'm like, who is this kid? It's unbelievable to see. Anyways, enough of that. Let's get into the conversation today. We really want to make this about the guys, not about what we're doing. So let's answer some questions. I think these ones came from Facebook, and let's just dive right into it.
Yeah. Yeah. To join us on Facebook, go to facebook.com/groups/Order of Man. All right. Our first question, Steven Zeller. How do you come up with great ideas for your Friday field notes week after week? What's your creative process?
It's just a matter of being observant. I mean, that's really all it is. I can look in the Facebook group and Instagram and podcasts that have done very well in the past and really start to develop some themes and some lines. I'm going to grab something here.
Yeah.
So I've also got my phone, and what I do when I come across these points that I hear over and over and over again, I think, okay, well, this is probably a good topic. I'm just pulling this up here. A good topic for Friday field notes. So I've got notes right here of all the potential Friday field notes that I could talk about. So you can see, and I've got spam coming in. Let me delete that. But you can see I've got about 30 plus, maybe even more potential podcast episodes.
This is random. I'm working out. Oh, I got a good subject. And then you're just jotting it down in the phone.
And that's something I've actually been doing for years and years, probably a decade at this point. When I have thoughts and ideas, I write it down because I got so frustrated with having this idea. And I'm like, oh yeah, I'll deal with that later. Whether it's a shopping list or a parts list or ideas for a Friday field notes or things I needed to do around the house or things I needed to buy on Amazon or whatever it was, I'm like, I'll remember that. And then I would never remember it. Right.
Totally.
And so I created a folder on my phone, and I've got potential taglines, shirt concepts, lessons for my son, group posts that I could make, Friday field notes ideas, monthly topics in the Iron Council. I mean, I've got topic after topic after topic after topic because I will just forget this. Potential podcast guests on here. I've got a lot of things on this notepad, and it's served me very, very well to have this here.
Yeah. And that's why he puts it on an Android, because he wants to ensure that it stays safe and secure. No.
just sit in silence. There's problems with both. Look, if we're going to get into the computer debate here. So I use Apple devices, and let's just talk about computers for a minute. We were talking about this earlier. Apple devices, these people are too smart for their own good, and they get in their own way. Yeah. PCs are a pile of shit. They just break down and they don't work and they don't function. They're cheaper, but they just like I don't know if I've got a Dell or an HP. I've got something in the store and I bought it because it was cheaper. And it does what it needs to do, but it loads slow. It bogs down. I get a bunch of notifications about my virus protection and emails and sign up for this and sign up for that. I'm like, there's gotta be a better solution. We need a third solution. It's like politics. You've got Democrats and Republicans, and we need a third solution here because it's both shitty. So that's where I am.
Next Friday Field Note, right, Mac versus PC by Ryan Mickler.
Neither. I'm not satisfied with either. There's got to be a better solution.
Yeah. This is where the nerds come out of the closet and they start.
Bring it on.
They'll start sending you messages like, it's Linux. In Linux, you need to switch to Linux. Yeah.
And people will call me like, can I build you a custom computer? Which I'm like, sounds pretty enticing, but then it's like, won't work with anything.
Yeah. Or if you need help on it, it's like, now I got to call you back. All right. Yeah. I'm teasing. I shouldn't joke around so much.
You're not
all right,
teasing.
Josh.
You're serious.
A little bit. I just don't want to rat hole on it.
All right. So that's where my inspiration for Friday Field Notes comes from. I might see a billboard or I might have a conversation or I might see something on the Facebook group and I'm like, cool. That's a good idea. That something needs to be addressed. Write it down. And I also try to stay up to date with current events. Like I don't want to be, there's a fine line between, especially in this day and age of like being inundated and consumed with information and then just being informed. People a lot of times will say, well, I want to be well informed. That's why I watch Fox and CNN and all these outlets. And I think, golly, it's just, you're not being very deliberate and intentional about that. I think there are ways for you to be informed, but to curate it and be intentional about it. So you don't need to get inundated with absolutely everything, because I don't need to know everything. If I'm listening to CNN or Fox is probably guilty of this more than anybody else, especially on Instagram. They'll post something about, I don't even know things I don't even care about. I'm like, well, this isn't newsworthy. I don't care that a guy saved a dog in Kentucky. Like that doesn't matter. That's not relevant. I mean, congratulations. That's good, but I don't care. And yet we get inundated and bogged down with this stuff. So we just need to be a little bit more intentional and deliberate about how we're spending our time and where we're consuming our information from.
Yeah. All right, Josh, let me pause. So, I mean, some guys might be listening to this and say, well, this is great information, but I don't do podcasts, so not applicable. And I just want to clarify, Ryan, you would probably follow this process, period. Because you might have a conversation of, I need to bring that up with my son, or, I have a date night idea with my wife, or I should be doing this around the house. Like, this is a process that you follow just to stay on top of the things that you should be doing and capturing it so you can act on it later.
Yeah. This isn't only just for content. This is to organize my life. So if we're going on vacation and I need to pick something up, write it down. If I have a to-do list and I need to get things done, document those, write them down. If I need a parts list because we're working on the canoe or another project, write it down in its own category. So yeah, this isn't just about content creation. It's about life organization and efficiency. Like, I want to get shit done. And if I just let it bounce around up here in my brain, I'm going to get some of it done, but I'm going to forget most of it because I get busy and just like you guys do. So it's just an organizational framework, a process that I use.
Copy. All right. Kevin Cope. I've heard you talk about imposter syndrome. When you first started out, how did you handle that as you were developing your expertise?
I mean, this is very simple. I never pretended to be something that I wasn't, and I still don't. I talk about my failures and my shortcomings and how I don't have things figured out and how I want to get better and what I'm working on and what I suck at. I've never put myself on some pedestal I don't belong. I'll say it this way. I've done that in the past and it's never gone well. So guys, I'm not the epitome of masculinity. I'm not in the best shape. I'm not the smartest. I'm not the most well-connected. I'm not always patient or even all that kind, frankly, to my children and wife at times. I'm trying to figure this stuff out as well. So we have this really interesting phenomenon where we have access to millions and millions and millions of people, and we can put on this show and create a persona about who we are. You know, I think about that with Jake and Logan Paul, for example. These guys are doing interesting things, very fascinating, very interesting. Mil. You know, is that what he made on the fight?
Yeah.
Yeah. Crazy. So very interesting. But it's a show, right? And you got to know it's a show. You can still be entertained. I'm not saying that. You can still be entertained, but it is a show. And we can use social media as a show to put on this entertainment for people. But if that's not really you, then you're going to feel like an imposter, of course, because you're acting like an imposter. So when I started Order of Man, I never said, I've got this all figured out. Listen to me. I'm going to give you all the answers. Even now, when we do the Ask Me Anything, I tell you guys, and I'm halfway joking, we'll give you mediocre answers to your powerful questions. That's true. We don't have everything figured out. So if you want to overcome imposter syndrome, stop acting like a fake and stop pretending you're better than you are. And just be real about who you are. I had a friend and mentor, Sean Whalen, said one of the things he says is your mess is your message. And I took that to heart. The things that I'm messy with, the things that I'm not good at, the pitfalls and the problems I've had in my past, that's the message. It's not that I'm perfect and I have everything figured out. It's that I've overcome some of this stuff and I'm still working on other stuff. So if you want to overcome quote unquote imposter syndrome, simple. Don't be an imposter, period, full stop, the end.
Yeah. Well, and I think that's what makes you relatable, Ryan. And I think the other thing that comes to mind is, and I'm sure this has happened to you, it's certainly happened to me a lot of times where I've put someone on a pedestal and they were that for me. They're like this perfect example of something. And then once I got to know them, I was like, oh, like they actually are relatable, but they don't present themselves as relatable, or I put them so much on a pedestal that I couldn't relate to them. Right. And so even guys that come across, I think, of like almost unrelatable to us, they actually are. You're just not seeing it, or you don't know them well enough to actually see them as the human being that they actually are.
Some of them, you know, I agree with you on some of them, and others I know for a fact are putting on a show.
Yeah. Yeah. Or
because I've seen it.
Yeah. Or I was going to say some of them are just on a different level. Like, well, let me ask you this, like David Goggins and Jocko, you know, in your conversations with them, did they seem more human as you've gotten to know them? Or were they still like, no, you're still just a whole other level?
No, look,
you know,
look, I stopped putting men on pedestals a long time ago. And maybe that's a luxury of the position that I'm in, where I've had conversations with some of these men who seem untouchable.
Yeah.
They're not that.
Yeah.
Okay, Jocko is extremely disciplined. Goggins is extremely disciplined. A bunch of these guys are extremely disciplined. And there's other facets of life they would readily admit that they're still working on. So yeah, they're human. You know, they're really good at this one thing. And some other guys, I think the two you mentioned, Jocko and Goggins, are actually pretty real, but there's other guys who put on this persona. So don't bank on it.
Yeah.
That's what we need to be careful of. Don't bank on it. You know, if you're inspired by Jocko or Goggins or Andy Frisella or whoever, be inspired and motivated by them, but don't bank on them. Bank on yourself.
Yeah.
And then you'll never be let down. You know, we've had guys, and we've seen it over the past 5 years, guys that, you know, professional athletes, movie stars who have gotten into some sort of scandal or problem. And you think, oh, this guy, like, oh no, I'm let down. Well, yeah, because you placed an unrealistic expectation on that guy. And that's not to excuse their behavior. They're not gods. They're just human beings. And so just glean what information you can. Like Tom Brady. Let's take Tom Brady. I don't know Tom Brady. He seems like he's a decent guy. He seems like he loves his wife. He cares about his family. He's an incredible athlete. The end. I don't know if he's into drugs. I don't know if he's into strippers. I don't know if he's into hookers. I have no idea.
Yeah.
But I am inspired by his work ethic. I'm inspired that he seems to be a family man, somebody who cares about his kids. I'm inspired by that. I think that's great. and that causes me to be a better person. But if ever something came out and he wasn't the guy everybody thought he was, like, I'm not disappointed because I don't know what he's about. All I get to see is this little snippet of his life, and I take it for what it's worth. And like the rest, I'm like, I can't control the other 80% or 90 or 99% that I can't see, but I'll be motivated by the 1%. And that's enough for me.
Yeah. Versus the average person paints this entire persona around who he is as an individual based upon how he plays football.
Yeah. Or how he posts things on Instagram.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. All right. Josh McDavid. What's the best way to get out of a slump? Depression can be self-perpetuating in that you feel a lack of motivation and drive due to depression, and yet you are depressed because of a lack of motivation and drive.
Yeah.
How does one get out of this loop?
I would say there's three things. Number one, mix it up. Sometimes when you're in a rut, it's because you've worn down that rut in the dirt road, and that's just what you slip into. Think about this. You've got an old country dirt road. You drive down that thing every day and everything just seems fine. And then there's a big rainstorm and there's one asshole who decides to go through the dirt road in the rain and creates this huge rut. And then what happens? It dries out. And then that rut is basically stuck there. It's like frozen there in that rut. It's there and everybody slips into it. It's a real bitch to drive through, and everybody gets pissed off at the one a-hole who decided to drive his truck through the thing. Well, that's you. You're the a-hole. Okay. You're the one that drove it through. And now you're so used to it. You're so accustomed to that rut being in there, and you're falling into that thing because it's really easy to do that, to go that route. And sometimes what we need to do is we just need to mix it up. We need to throw an entire wrench in the system. And I'm not telling you to be reckless, and I'm not telling you to be stupid. I'm not telling you to abdicate your responsibilities. I'm saying just throw a wrench in the system. Say yes to something you normally wouldn't say yes to. Go on an adventure, take a risk, go on a vacation, try something new, pick up a new hobby, make a new friendship, pick up a new skill. Just throw a wrench in the system and just see what it's like. You don't need to continue to go down that path, but sometimes just jerking on the wheel hard enough will pop you up out of that rut and give you a perspective you can't see when you're down in the trenches, stuck in that pit. So that's number one. Do something completely different. I would say outside of that, just figure out, try to understand and unpack and uncover why you're feeling the way you are. Emotions are very good. There's this trend where everybody's like, oh, you shouldn't be emotional and show no emotion. No, guys, nobody's talking about it like this. And there's a spectrum of the conversation I'm about to have with you. One is like, don't give your emotions any credibility. And the other end of the spectrum is share everything and be fluffy and happy and wonderful. No, both are wrong. There's a middle ground. And it seems like you and I, Kip, are the only ones talking about the middle ground. Okay. And the middle ground is this: understand your emotions, be in touch with them, be in tune with them, figure them out so that you can create a positive course of action. Yeah. It's not vulnerable for the sake of being vulnerable, and it's not completely shut off to emotion. It's a factor. I'm pissed. Ryan, you just shouldn't be pissed. No, maybe you should actually be pissed. But maybe more than that, you should figure out why you're pissed off. Man, what is wrong? You're in a slump. Why? What is going on in your life right now? Is your marriage on the rocks? Are you not satisfied with your career? Are you 30 or 40 pounds overweight? Are you getting declined and turned down for promotions or dates? Like, why are you in a slump? And then once you figure out what the culprit might be, then we use the battle planner or some other tool to come up with a plan of action that will put us in a better position. Then we do our after action review and we figure out if that's working or not working, and we adjust as needed. But I think we need to do a better job getting to the root, and especially as men, telling ourselves that it's okay to experience emotion. It's just not okay to react solely on emotion. Yeah. We should use it as a consideration, and then we make better decisions moving forward.
Yeah. And what I hate about that mentality of like, don't have emotions, that's complete BS anyway, because you are, right? Like if I'm pissed, I'm pissed. And I can go, oh, don't be pissed, but I'm still going to be pissed. I may not say something, but I'm walking around with a chip on my shoulder. I'm coming across that way anyway. Like I might as well like evaluate like what's going on. Why am I feeling this way? One thing that I've done in the past that so far has been true, and I don't know if there's a third consideration, but this has worked really well for me, that usually if there's an upset, if I'm kind of in a slump, I'm depressed or whatever, it's actually always one of three things. Number one, I'm out of integrity. So there's something I'm doing that I'm having a conflict with myself about, and I need to correct it. Whether that's stop doing it, resolving something or whatever, right? So I'm out of integrity. Number two, I'm not expressing something that needs to be expressed. So I'm holding back communication. And probably this is my number one, right? Something rubs me wrong or whatever, and I'm not communicating it to my wife or whoever, and I'm kind of bottling it up. Now, this is really, and let me add just a point here because I think this is really critical. Communicating it isn't lashing out, right? It's not me like, oh, I'm upset at Ryan, and then so I call up Ryan and go, you're a dick, and I'm pissed off because of this. No. It's, hey, Ryan, I want to let you know, a little bothered. When this occurred, I interpret it as such, rubbed me wrong a little bit. I know I probably shouldn't feel that way, but I just want to let you know, kind of get off my chest a little bit. I could do that without causing a conflict with you, but I was able to express something and give you a heads up that like, hey, this kind of rubs me wrong a little bit as well, right? And I might have an ask and say, hey, if you don't mind, I'd appreciate this or whatever, but it's not attacking you. It's me taking ownership of that feeling.
Right. I mean, you and I had a conversation before we punched record on the podcast where I said, hey, Kip, I need to talk with you about one thing. We took 10 or 15 seconds. You said, got it. Good to know. All right, let's come up with a solution. Boom. Problem solved. I didn't come at you. I didn't attack you. I wasn't pissed. Totally. I said, hey, here's something that needs to be brought to your attention. Cool. Got it. Received. And I think in that moment, there was two things that were done right. I think I presented it correctly to you, and I think you were humble enough to receive it correctly.
Totally. Well, and what I loved about it too is what you said, and I don't mind sharing this. What you said is like, hey, if you're too busy or if you got too much going on, then let's pivot and figure out how we do that. So you even suggested a solution, not just like, hey, Kip, you're dropping the ball. It was like, hey, you're kind of, the perception is you're kind of dropping the ball here. Do we need a pivot? Do we need to free up some time or whatever, right? And then, of course, and to your point, I was able to suck up my ego a little bit and go, no, I could step up in this area better than I am.
Right.
Yeah. And then that third one is expectation. So I think those two things could be not true. And I could just have expectation. Ryan, I'm 42 years old. This is not where I expected to be in my life. I've had this picture in my mind that I'd be this successful. This is how my life would go. Or are you better yet? I have this expectation I've held on to my entire life of what a marriage should look like. And guess what? It's a hell of a lot harder than it is. And that bothers me. And so even just thinking through that and going, all right. And this is my favorite part about thinking through expectation. No one owes you anything. Like we're talking about this the other day. It's like, no one owes you anything. Like we walk around like we deserve shit. Mm-hmm. Oh, it shouldn't be this way. My wife shouldn't be this way. My employer should. Says who? There's no book of life that says you deserve anything, And so I like thinking that like, wait, I don't deserve this. I don't deserve anything. Or maybe that's not the right term, deserve, but like, you know what I'm saying? Is like, I'm not entitled to these things.
Right.
And it's out of the kindness of probably someone else's, it's out of the kindness of someone else that most good things come to me in life. And I might deserve them, but it still required someone to give that to me, to present me with that opportunity, to take a risk on me. Absolutely. There's no like system in play that goes, oh, Kip earned 10 points, thus he gets opportunity. It's like, no, like someone still had to take a chance.
That's why I despise when people say, just work hard, everything will work out. I know a lot of hard workers that don't have the lives they expected to.
Yeah.
It's not just work hard. There's more to it than that.
And it goes back to like, and then that also addresses life. And life is that, and it's a quote I shared on the AMA I did, like the solo one I did a couple of weeks ago, is a quote by Gordon B. Hinckley.
Yeah, no one listened to that one, so go ahead and repeat that
one. But life is tough. And most kids end up growing up to be just people. And your wife is a human. And jobs are tough sometimes. And the objective of life is really to enjoy it. Right. And to grow and from the experience. And so I have to remind myself of that, because I walk around with all kinds of expectation of how life should be and how people should be showing up. And I have to remind myself that, like, there's no governing body that determines how people should show up. Right. And I need to have a little bit more empathy. So the 3 was integrity, lack of communication, or something needs to be communicated, and then managing your expectation.
Yeah, this is a great framework. I actually wrote them down because I knew it was going to be powerful. And I think what's interesting about this is that third component, the expectation, actually takes care of the other 2 if you follow up with it.
Totally.
Right. My marriage isn't what it should be. Okay, well, that's your expectation. So what can we do now to help manage that expectation? Talk with your wife. Hey, hon, I thought sex would be better. Well, you better work some things out. Right. Or I thought
that's going to go over well.
Or I thought we were going to. Well, I think it would, actually. I know you're joking,
but a hell of a lot better than if you say nothing.
Right. Like I've had conversations with my wife about this, and she's had conversations with me about it, about intimacy. Because I'm not a very intimate person. I put my head down and I go, and she's like, hey, I need more intimacy. I'm like, oh, okay. Thank you for telling me. Like, I need to be reminded of this stuff. So when you manage those expectations, you're going to be more in alignment, which is the integrity issue. And then you're going to communicate it. Hey, I thought it would be this and it's not. Am I missing something, or do we need to do something? But that expectation piece, I think, takes care of, if you follow up on it, takes care of the other 2 pretty well.
Yeah. And I love what the connection you just made is sometimes the expectation you have is out of integrity, where you're walking around judging someone be unfairly. Mm-hmm. And it's, back to no more Mr. Nice Guy, covert contract with your wife. Mm-hmm. And you're blaming her for not showing up a way that you've never even communicated with her. Right. So who's out of integrity? You or her? Right. You are. Yeah, I like it.
Cool. What else?
All right. Paulo Perna. How do you overcome childhood traumas that are still affecting you when you didn't think they were? When you thought it was in the past, but somehow keeps holding you back?
Let's just say it first and foremost, go to therapy.
Yeah.
I'm not a medical expert,
especially childhood trauma. Yeah.
I'm not a psychiatrist. I've never claimed to be. So anything that I say, and I'm going to share some other thoughts here, of course, with you, but anything that I say should be taken with a grain of salt, and understanding that I'm not a professional in these matters. I'm just sharing my perspective, but there's a stigma. There's a very real stigma on men going to get professional counseling and help. And I made this analogy the other day. It was probably in a podcast. And I said, you would never ridicule or poke at a contractor who decided to use a nail gun instead of a hammer to build a home. You would just say he's using this tool at his disposal to build a better home that's going to be built better, hardier construction, more efficient, more productive, and that's it, period.
Yeah.
Right? A hunter who decides to get the best equipment available, whether it's the newest compound bow or the new scope for his gun, you'd never say, oh, well, I can't believe he's using that scope. No, you would say, well, that makes sense. Like, he's a hunter. He wants to improve his efficiency. He wants to use tools at his disposal to produce the outcome. And then we get into the mind and the mindset, and all of a sudden it's like, oh, he's going to therapy. Oh, what a loser.
He's broken. Yeah.
He's broken. What a loser. Like, he can't just figure it out. Like, why do we do that? Man, go get the help you need. Talk with somebody, have that conversation, work through these things. I think that's very, very powerful. Outside of that, I'm probably not going to share a whole lot, because I think that's what you need to do first. And anything I say, you might say, well, I'll just do that instead. No, just go get some help. And if you have cool. Come back and say, hey, I have had help. I've talked with these guys. I've had these conversations. But that's seriously, that's just my recommendation at this point. Go get the help you need. It's okay to see a therapist. It's okay to see a counselor. It's okay to get some professional help, somebody who can unlock some of these thoughts and things that have been bouncing around in your brain and your body that you haven't been able to figure out yet. That's what you need to do.
Yeah, I like it. Jim Spencer, why do people complain or get depressed over life? People die, shit goes wrong. It's just life. Anything that you would add to Jim's comment?
It goes back to what we were talking about earlier with expectations. Yeah, that's your expectation. You're actually hedging and managing your expectations. It's just life. Sometimes things are shitty. That's a management of expectations. By definition, that's exactly what you're doing.
Yeah.
And other people place weird, unhealthy expectations on things. This should go this way. It should be this way. I'm entitled to this. I deserve that. I feel like we went through this pretty well. But we've got to lower the bar a little bit for what we expect life to be. And I would say this, because I talk about this and people are like, well, you should never lower the bar. Don't lower the bar for your performance. That's not what I'm saying. Lower the bar for the expectation from said performance or just life in general.
Yeah.
You know, I want to do well, for example, with this podcast. And so I'm going to do everything within my control to put the odds in my favor by working hard and being diligent, securing great podcast guests, answering questions, being well-researched, learning how to communicate more effectively. That's all within my control. And then I just got to let the chips fall where they may. I had one of my early mentors and trainers say, Ryan, just do your best and let the chips fall where they may. And if they don't fall in the way that you want them to, then figure out if there's something else you can do within your control. Maybe it's just a one-off. So look for trends instead of just one-off results, and focus on the things that you can control, not the things that you can't. People die, people get sick, the economy goes south, people we don't like get elected president, and politics doesn't always work out the way that you'd like it to or the way that you see it. All largely outside of your control. Get some of that control back. Focus on the things that matter. I talked a lot about this in my financial planning practice. People would talk about the financial economy and how things were working. And I said, you know, if you focused more on your own personal economy, you really wouldn't have to be so wrapped up in what the global or national economy was doing. You wouldn't have to be so focused on what the stock market was doing on any given day. You wouldn't be so focused on how the president is doing this or not doing that. You'd be focused on saving money, investing, paying off debt, living within your means, making smart purchases, investing correctly, all of that within your control. And lo and behold, it produces more favorable results than if you're worried about who the president is, what the economy is doing, and things that you have no authority or control over.
Yeah. And I could see how that could correlate to all aspects of life. You know, it's like,
of course, yes.
When you're get your crap together and your household's in order and you're improving yourself, the less critical it is that Joe Schmo is improving himself and his faults are no longer as important because you're focusing on your faults. So,
right. Yeah. Well, and it works to that level. It also works to health and fitness. I hear from a lot of guys who are like, you know, I've been training for 60 days and I haven't seen as greater results as I wanted. Well, what did it take you to get there? Well, I've been on the couch for the last decade. All right. Well, it's probably going to take you a little longer than 60 days to get to where you want to get. And we all know that exercising and eating correctly produces results. Like there's no guesswork about it. So just keep doing it. Here's one problem that we as men have. We want to fix everything. That's not a problem. That's a feature. That's a good thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
We want to fix everything. And when things don't get fixed the way that we would like them to, the marriage, the health, the financials, whatever, any facet of life, when things don't get fixed as quickly as we'd like them to, we think we're doing something wrong and we need to do something different. And so we mistake action with prudence. And sometimes it's not. Sometimes, going back to Jocko, it's just doing it every day, all day, for the rest of your life. And then having a little faith, because we know we've seen it time in and time out, that if you do the right things, the results inevitably come. So just keep doing the right things. Stop getting so fixated on the result or lack thereof and focus more. This is why we do it in the battle planner. We focus so heavily on the tactics. It's what we're doing daily, knowing that the results will inevitably take care of themselves.
All right, Mr. Stanley, Jordan Stanley, is it important for men to be dangerous? And if so, why?
Yeah, I mean, this goes back to Jordan Peterson's quote: "A good man is not a weak man. A good man is a dangerous man who has it under voluntary control," something along those lines. Yeah, I think it is. I think you should be dangerous to the right people. I think people who want to do you harm should be afraid that you're not the guy to be picked on. I think having a little bit of an edge is good because it signifies to people that you aren't needy, that you aren't desperate, that your results and your satisfaction doesn't rely upon them, that you're going to go out and get whatever it is that you want. Also, women and your children and other people are going to look to you and think, hey, this guy's capable. He's proficient. If things go wrong, that's the guy I'm going to look to. And leaders are rewarded. You know, we're rewarded with influence and credibility and authority and finances. So yeah, you should be dangerous, not to mention the confidence component that comes with it.
Yeah.
You know, if we're talking about physically dangerous, I'm more confident if I'm more capable of administering violence. In fact, yesterday, I'm trying to think of our dates here, we just released a podcast with Clint Emerson on combat skills used for good, not evil. And in his newest book, 100 Deadly Skills Combat Edition, he talks about firefighting, knife fighting, physical training, jujitsu, all of these things to become more dangerous so that we can keep people safe, we can keep ourselves and other people protected, and then also we can get what we want out of life. Because that danger, like think about jujitsu for a second. That assertiveness, that physical assertiveness translates perfectly over into asserting yourself with clients or with your children or with your wife. Obviously, you're not going to be physical with those people, but it translates. It's vocal assertiveness. It's the way that you carry yourself. It's the way you stand. It's the way you present yourself. If you go to jujitsu or you're doing some other form of martial art or you're training and you're lifting heavy objects and you're getting stronger, then all of that is going to translate perfectly over into other facets of your life. So some guys will say, well, you know, I'm not going to train with a firearm because I would never need that. And the odds are that you're right. You probably never will need that. And isn't that such an incredible blessing? But there's other unintended benefits that come from being dangerous. And it is something that we all should strive to be more of.
Yeah. Well, and it's part of being a sovereign man is your ability to protect yourself if necessary, you know, and I know the world's like, generally speaking, a safe place until it's not.
I mean, look, we all say that, but is it really? Like I almost got into an altercation at the gas pump with somebody just several weeks ago, you know, like there was a misunderstanding and he was bent out of shape. And then I was, you know, pissed off, and these things happen all the time. You know, nothing came of that, which was good, but very easily that could have went an entirely different way.
Yeah. Well, and I think we have a tendency to be in our bubbles. You know, it's like my neighborhood's really great, but like there's evil out there, right? Mm-hmm. Like just last week here in Utah, there was a 10-year-old kid snatched from a playground in South Ogden. Teacher carrying a firearm stopped the person from kidnapping the kid. Like, what if he didn't have a gun? Is he in a position to actually defend that kid physically without a weapon? Probably should, or at least wish he would have been able to do that. You know what I mean? If necessary. So, I mean, I don't know. I think it's critical.
100%.
All right. Eric Kovac, is the Iron Council for every man, or is it just made only for certain men who follow certain political and or religious ideas?
I'm not even going to answer this question because it's a loaded.
Maybe more guys would. You don't think so?
It's a loaded question. You already know the answer to that. The only time somebody would ask that question is because they're either trolling, and they want to get a reaction or a response, or because they're playing stupid. Like, when have I ever said that only conservatives can join the Iron Council? When have I ever said that only white men in America can join the Iron Council? Like, the only reason you'd ask that is because you're overly insecure, you're trolling, or you're deliberately playing dense in order to make up some sort of narrative that just doesn't exist. So no, I'm not going to answer that question. You already know the answer to that question.
All right. Next, Kyle Combs. Thoughts on the UFO document released and why people don't seem to care much. So I guess recently the U.S. government released stuff.
I don't know what they released. I mean, I've heard things, but I'll tell you why people don't care. Because the government lies. And you know it, and I know it, and everybody else listening to this podcast knows it. So what do you do when you're confronted with somebody you know is a chronicle liar? You stop listening to them.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know if there's UFOs. I don't know what's what. I don't know what kind of aliens or what kind of other countries have technology we're not aware of. I don't know. But I'll tell you what, I don't trust the government to give us the real scoop on it. There's also a thing about UFOs. Like, I mean, I've seen these things like the pill UFO, or the Tic Tac UFO, whatever they call it. Really? Like, that's the best we have? Everybody's walking around with a video camera and picture or phones. Like that. I don't know what that is. That could be a little bug on the lens. Like, that's what you got? Give me a break. Like, if there was UFOs, like we would have something better by now, I would think.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm not saying aliens don't exist. I actually believe that they probably do. I don't know if they're flying around the screen or if that's a fly on your lens because, your lens is dirty. I don't know. And give me something compelling. I haven't seen something compelling yet.
Well, and what's the definition of UFO? Something that's flying that we don't know what it is. That's all that is anyway, right? So, but I like to bring up, I like what you said about government. And this is the part that pisses me off, that we live in a society that has given a free pass to dishonesty if you're in politics. Yeah. Isn't that pathetic? We live in a culture that goes, oh, it's politics, Ryan, so it's okay to be dishonest. It's okay not to have integrity because you're in that area of like our society. Isn't that pathetic? Like,
it is.
Shouldn't we all be so bothered by the idea that that's just like the way it is and that's acceptable? Man, it's messed up.
It is messed up. That's why we stay informed, intentionally informed, and then we focus on what we can control, and then we hold our elected representatives accountable. Yeah. By impeaching them, by voting them out, by voting other people in, by running for office. These are all things we need to do.
Yeah. Stephen Strode, any resources out there that you know of for talking to your kids about mental health and how they can help their friends through things? My son, 11-year-old, recently came home from school and told me about his friend who has been cutting himself on his arms and legs. Someone had noticed the cuts and told the teacher about it, and they contacted their parents. This was one of those topics that I was not prepared to discuss when it came up.
Yeah, no, of course. At 11, that's wild.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it was handled correctly. It sounds like a teacher was informed, and of course they'll notify the authorities and talk to the appropriate channels. And so again, I go back to what I said earlier with the childhood trauma thing, is like get the right authorities and professional help in places. Outside of that, stay tuned for the podcast because we're going to be talking about this stuff. And again, I think peers are going to listen to their peers, maybe more so than their fathers at times. So we're working on a solution right now that'll be available in the next 3 to 4 weeks. But in the meantime, you handled it correctly. It goes to the right mediums, goes to the right channels. Authorities have been notified, but this is serious stuff, very serious stuff. and we need to take it seriously. But outside of that, parents are going to be the solution. So look into Boy Crisis by Dr. Warren Farrell. Look into Why Gender Matters and Boys Adrift by Leonard Sachs. Those are 3 books you can read that might give you some insight into what's happening in the school system, specifically with and to our young men, that might help you work through some of this and come up with some solutions for it.
Yeah. I would add Coddling of the American Mind to that list. I think that's highly insightful for the next coming up and coming. Is that
Haidt or Height? Jason Haidt or Height? I think, or Jonathan Haidt or Height.
I think I know that. Man. Yeah, you
guys can find it. Coddling of the American Mind.
Yeah. Question, if you don't mind me putting you on the spot, if that was Brecken, how would you? And he's like, dude, Dad, why would a kid do that? Like, what?
Oh, if he saw his friend?
Yeah. Like, how would you communicate that to your son?
I would ask a lot of questions. I've tried to be better at that, as opposed to asserting my own thoughts into it.
Get him to come, think through it.
Yeah. Isn't that what we want of our children? Don't we want them to think independently and critically on their own, free of our or other people's influence? Like, maybe not free of our influence, but certainly free of other people's influence. So I would ask a lot of questions. Hey, why do you think that is? What could be going on in his life? Why do you think that would be a solution that he would come to? How must he be feeling if he's doing that to himself? What can we do? What responsibilities do we have as a friend and somebody who acknowledges it? What should we do? How can we make that person feel better? If you think that person is excluded, what can we do to invite that person into our circle to make him or her feel better about themselves and their own life? So I would ask a lot of questions instead of just saying, well, you shouldn't do that. Okay. And well, it's just not good. Okay. And just you shouldn't. That's a hard conversation. I think that's why a lot of parents will overlook the conversation, because they don't know where to go and they think they need to have the answer. No, you just need to have the questions, actually. And that's what a good therapist will do. A therapist isn't necessarily going to say, do X, Y, and Z and you're done. They're going to ask you a lot of questions. This goes back to the childhood trauma thing. Ask you a lot of questions about your life and where it comes from and how it makes you feel and why you respond that way as opposed to a different way. And they're going to help you work through your own feelings and emotions. There's a great book called Coactive Coaching. And it's more catered towards like a life or a business coach, but it's very applicable when it comes to parenting as well. So you guys have heard me say it. The power of your life will be determined by the power of the questions you ask. And that's true for other people you're asking powerful questions from.
Yeah. I like that. When you said that, what really is resonating with me is that we ask those questions so the individual comes to their own conclusion.
Of course.
And when we come to our own conclusion, it comes with a different level of commitment and understanding than if you just told me.
Yeah, you're bought into it.
Yeah, I'm invested in like that thought process because it was mine versus you just gave it to me. And then I get a question like, oh, well, does he really understand me? Or, you know what I mean? Or whatever. Right. And so that's a really powerful way to get buy-in. Yeah. I like it.
Hey, I want to go back. I've been thinking about this as we've talked about this question about, is this movement for certain people or whatever, certain politics?
Yeah.
Remind me what the question was.
I'm scrolling up here. Is the Iron Council every man, or is it made only for certain men who follow a certain political and or religious idea?
So there's one other reason I was thinking about this. Is you're trying to make yourself a victim and or excluded. And I think that happens a lot in society. People are deliberately trying to exclude themselves or paint themselves as a victim. The victimhood thing is pretty easy to understand why. It's easier to be a victim and assume that it's everybody else's fault. That's pretty easy to understand why. But why would people attempt to exclude themselves? I think the reason people attempt to exclude themselves is because it absolves them of the responsibility of doing work. It's very similar to the victimhood mindset. Like if I get to exclude myself, then the reason that I didn't succeed wasn't because I didn't do the work in the Iron Council. It was because they didn't even let me get into the Iron Council.
Yeah.
Right. The reason I'm not an athlete is not because, I didn't learn the plays and work hard and develop strength and play solid and contribute to the team. It was because the coach was an asshole and he cut me from the team.
And had favorites.
Right. Yeah. So the victim and the exclusion card are very, very similar. And they're the stem from them. The reason we do that is the same. It's like, I want to absolve myself of the responsibility of doing work. So no, I was going to do the work. I promised I was going to do it, but you just didn't let me have a chance.
Yeah.
That's another reason that I think is very, very prevalent in society today.
And I think that's right. I think that's so subconscious that people don't even, they're not even aware of it. They're just like, oh, the coach is a jerk. Like they don't even have the dialogue of going like, well, yeah, but if I'm a really valuable athlete, then the coach would probably not care because he really wants to win. Right. And all that matters is that I show up in a way that helps the team win. Right. But we don't consider those things. And I think we see this all over the place. And I'll use Utah as an example because I think this shows up in Utah quite a bit. Everyone knows. I say the term Utah and everyone listening goes, oh, wait, that's where all the Mormons live. So there's this dogma already, right? There's this impression that no one lives in Utah unless you're LDS. and then the second one is,
really?
Yeah. And then the second one is, and I'm 100% sure this shows up on a regular basis. Someone moves to Utah and their impression is that most of my neighbors are probably Mormons. And so what do? They immediately enter their relationship with their neighbors from the perspective of being an outsider. Oh, they're not included, or I'm not going to fit in. Like they enter it with the negative perception versus if this guy, let's assume this guy had the strong impression that everyone in the Iron Council was conservative. And what was the other thing that he was talking about? Religion. Everyone in the Iron Council is Christian and conservative. You could actually join the Iron Council saying, dude, they need me. They need my progressive viewpoints. They need my different religious viewpoints. I could provide huge value here. But yet we don't do that. We go, oh, I don't fit in.
Right.
And as a prime example of that, there are gentlemen, of course, in the Iron Council that do not share their same religious beliefs.
Of course.
And they are some of the best conversations that we have. Like I love, and I know who you know who I'm talking about. We have like a Catholic priest guy in the Iron Council. I love listening to that guy. I'm not Catholic, but I could listen to him for hours talking about his religious belief. I find it fascinating and highly enlightening, not threatened at all. He brings something to the table that is so valuable that I would never have gotten otherwise. Well,
there's another member. I'm not going to name names, but there's another member I'm thinking of right offhand that came to one of our events, and he laughs at himself because he calls himself the token liberal because like everybody knows I'm conservative. You're obviously conservative, and yet we have a great relationship. He makes fun of me for conservative values. I make fun of him. And it isn't done in mean spirit. It's done in trying to actually get to a closer place.
Totally.
Get closer together, So yeah, I mean, there are places who are going to be exclusionary, but if you come at it from the right mindset and the right approach of, I want to learn, I want to be open-minded, I want to share my perspective to add value, not to detract, but to add value, then of course, that's why we created it.
Yeah.
It doesn't say the Iron Council is for men who are conservative, who live in America, who are white, who believe in God. It just says this is for men who want to get better, period.
Yeah. And to put the period on this statement is we become better with those different viewpoints. That's valuable.
If I will say this though, there's a caveat to that. And a lot of people don't understand that. The caveat is we're all trying to move in the same direction.
Yeah.
Because look, so a lot of the popular phrase is our strength is our diversity, or rather our diversity is our strength. No, it isn't. Diversity isn't strong in and of itself. Diversity is only able to create strength if you're all moving in the same direction, but there might be some conflicting or different ideas on how to get there, so we can come up with the most effective way to do it. So here's a metaphor.
Yeah.
Yes, here's a metaphor. We're all on a boat. I was joking on Instagram the other day about building a Viking longship.
Oh, so see, I didn't know it's a joke. I was like,
I'm not joking.
Yeah.
I say I'm joking, but I'm not. I got to finish these two first. Okay, so we all get on the Viking longship and we're like, we're going there. And I point to a direction, or I point to a place on a map and I say, we're going there. And you got 100 guys on the ship and 100 of us are rowing. We get halfway. And then 3 of the guys decide, well, I don't want to go there. I want to go in the opposite direction. So now you got 97 guys who are rowing there. You got 3 guys who are rowing in the opposite direction. Is that diversity helping you? Is it your strength? Of course it's not your strength. It's actually a weakness. Now, counter that with, you got 100 guys. All of us decide we're going there. We're all going to go there. And we're rowing and we're rowing. And one guy gets up and he says, hey, Ryan, I've been thinking about this. We've been rowing for the past 3 days and I've been thinking about this. And, I used to row on the Olympic team, and we got about 50% of us rowing this way and another 50% of us doing it correctly. Would you mind if I taught everybody how to row correctly? We could get there faster and more efficiently if we all row in the same way. And I'm an expert because I was an Olympian in rowing. Diversity in that case can represent strength, because now he takes an hour, he teaches the guys how to row, and then we more than make up for that hour on our trip to wherever it is we're going. That's when diversity is strength. That's actually the problem we have in America. People aren't assimilating anymore. They're just being diverse, but they're just going into their own little pockets and they're not assimilating into the culture. I actually experienced that when I moved here to Maine. I felt like it was my responsibility to assimilate into the culture, to be involved with the people who are here, to be interested in the same things they were. Now, I bring my own set of interests and communication methods and styles and activities and things like that, but also I have a responsibility to assimilate here to the people around me. This is their land. This is their place. So I can represent some sort of diversity, but it's only powerful because I care about everybody here, my neighbors, my community members, and we're all trying to get to a better place together.
Yeah. And you're humble enough to realize that they may have stuff figured out that you don't know. And you need to ask the neighbor and the other people in the neighborhood of how to get through winter and what extra stuff you should have controlled in your house, right? You don't come in and go, well, in St. George, we did it this way, so you guys are idiots,
right? Right. Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. All right. Let's take a couple more.
All right. I have to actually wrap up after this one, if that's okay.
All right. One more.
All right.
It better be a good one. Andrew, it better be a good one, brother.
No pressure. Prickett, what is the best book for rebuilding yourself after divorce? Resources
Sovereignty.
for rebuilding yourself.
It is. I mean, that's part. Look, I know I'm biased. I get it.
Yeah.
But that's the truth. That's why I wrote that book. Not for divorce necessarily, but to rebuild yourself, to create yourself, to make yourself into a more effective and capable man.
Yeah. And regardless of what's happening around you, right? That's the whole point of the title. Absolutely.
So read Sovereignty and then start working through the battle plan, which is outlined in the book itself. That's not a cop-out answer. Is anybody who hasn't heard the podcast or maybe comes at it with a different perspective might think I'm just copping out. No, Andrew, you are the reason I wrote the book. You individually are the reason I wrote the book. It's over your left shoulder there, Kip. Get that book, read it, apply it.
Get on the path.
You. It's written for you.
Yeah, I like it. All right. That was good.
That was a good question.
Yeah.
Well played, Andrew. Well played.
I actually just made up Andrew's name, so I'm just joking.
It's a good idea, though. Speaking of integrity.
Yeah. So we talked about a few things just really quick. Iron Council, sovereignty. You can pick up sovereignty where books are available, but you can also
They're
pick
stored.
that up.
They're stored there and sold.
And you can also get them at store.orderofman.com along with other swag and content from Order of Man. And then, of course, you can join us on Facebook and the Iron Council. Facebook is facebook.com/group/Order of Man. And of course, in our exclusive brotherhood, the Iron Council, to learn more, go to orderofman.com/Iron Council. Did you want to throw out event dates at all?
The main event is closed, but we've got the legacy event, which is September 27th through the 29th, I believe. 27th through the 29th. Is that right? I could be wrong.
I have 23rd to the 26th.
Dang. You're probably, you are right.
No.
23rd to the 26th. You're right.
Am I right?
I know it is.
Okay.
Because I said that on Friday Field Notes and I felt stupid because I told him like the 27th through the 30th. I'm like, I don't even know when it is, but I think you're right. 23rd through the 26th. That's a father-son event for boys is between the ages of 8 to 15 with their fathers or their father figures. Could be an uncle, a brother, stepfather, of course, foster father, things like that. So the 23rd to the 26th of September, orderofman.com/legacy.
And of course, to follow Mr. Michler on Twitter and Instagram, that's Ryan Michler, Michler.
That's right. All right, guys. Great questions today. Hopefully we gave you some good answers. We'll be back on Friday for our Friday Field Notes. But until then, go out there, take action, and become the man you are meant to be.